So, evening all on Play Chess and also streaming to YouTube. Hi all. Going to be a bit boring carrying on from the Olympiad coverage of last week. I found 4 relatively interesting games, so let's go over them. So my selection this week features Magnus Carlsen in one game, Caruana another. Caruana, who's doing exceptionally well at the moment. But this game will start Magnus Carlsen playing white against Solak, Dragon Solak, 2-6-3-2. Okay, so Magnus Carlsen kicked off in this game in round 9 of the Olympiad with c4, the English opening, and we saw c6 and a quiet start here, knight f3, d5. And instead of white now playing a pawn to d4, Magnus actually plays e3. So there's a dark square grip, clearly, with e3, but it does hem in this bishop potentially. Knight f6, knight c3. a6, as though black is interested in a b5 later. And now we see a curious move, h3, as though white is interested in g4 at some point. So is white, in fact, if white's interested in g4, is white going to castle kingside in this position? That's interesting. e6, so a very solid structure from black here. And now b3, as though the bishop is interested in putting some pressure on these dark squares. This bishop, you can see, is hemmed in here, by the way. Bishop d6. And now it looks as though e5 might be handy for black. Let's put on actually a Kubica around about here and see a normal move if e5 is okay. If we played bishop b2, then I think e5 is okay for black actually. The engine evaluation is about equal as well here. And it might end up a kind of reverse French defense, for example, like this. This didn't happen, although this position might have some interesting features to it, but no, Magnus actually now, in the light of e5 being on the cards, actually stamps that out with d4, so keeping control of that e5 square. Now we have knight bd7, and okay, black might be playing e5 again, bishop b2, and black actually just castled here, committing the king on this side of the board. White hasn't castled kingside yet though, so could Magnus castle queenside here? He plays actually bishop e2. Now after queen e7, this move does show that white doesn't seem likely now to castle kingside after this next move, g4. So a very aggressive start position. So, okay, let's see. So, is this any good here? What do you guys think of this early g4? I don't know how many of you have seen this game of Magnus Carlsen. What do you think about this g4 here? If you want to leave any comments, actually, that'd be good. So, okay, so g4 at move 10. Very aggressive stuff. Black reacts with b5. Encouraging white to close the position a bit more, maybe with c5, but this tension is actually capped here. So now here we see g5. Okay, asking the knight to go somewhere. If the knight goes to h5, I don't think this is a problem for white because we're targeting that knight potentially as soon as this knight moves. So something like queen c2, h4. These seem okay. Black's not in a great state here, it seems. So black actually now played knight e4. And technically, black's doing well off this. The engines actually like this move. Now, if we did play a move like queen c2, let's have a quick look. This wasn't played. Then knight takes g5, simply nicking that pawn. This bishop's blocked in by its own pawn here, so I'm not sure there's a coordinated attack on g7, so this might be okay for black to take. The engines like this position, it's not such a big deal. It's given as not such a big deal anyway. So perhaps this is why in this position Magnus, after knight e4, he didn't play queen c2. He actually took this. And we see now after d takes that we've always got the d5 now to open up the bishop. So after knight d2, okay, this is on, but now this is attacked. So this is no good here, I would say, because we can just simply play this. And I think on queen g2 we just have bishop f3, and on bishop b4 check here we can just move the king here, and then we're going to enjoy using that g file and the bishop on g7. So actually black played f5, so we've always got the potential now as white to play d5, h4 protecting that pawn. Now black plays e5, and funny enough, this position is actually quite dangerous for Magnus Carlsen. I was a bit surprised by the game, this particular game, because it looks as though black's got good chances. There's a small advantage technically to black here, according to the engine perspective. It's stockfish at a certain depth, a small advantage here. What does white want to do in this position? If white plays d5, then we're kind of blocking this bishop, and in fact bishop b7, black doesn't seem to have too many problems. Magnus actually played c5. Okay, after bishop c7, it seems he's interested in attacking this pawn chain, not the king anymore. a4. So immediately threatening. A takes b, and then bishop takes b5. It seems on the cards anyway. Now black ignores that with f4 though. An aggressive move, f4. So what is going on here? For example, is this pawn on? That looks as though, but it looks as though this is going to be dangerous, and the bishop coming to check here. So I mean, let's have a look. Knight takes e4. In fact, after knight takes e4, black could just play e takes d4, and this is unpleasant. Queen takes d4. There's bishop e5, winning a piece actually. If the queen moves, we just take that on b2 and then take the knight on e4. So it looks to be a dangerous move, very aggressive, f4, very aggressive move, f4. But apparently there might have been better in this position for black to increase the advantage even slightly in e takes d4, bishop takes, and taking this pawn, which seems a bit risky. And although there's this pin, again, a takes, c takes, bishop takes, apparently black's okay here. Bishop e6, apparently black is doing well. So we've got pressure here on things. For example, like this, black could take, and it's potentially unpleasant now for the knight d3 check, so that has to be snapped off. Here, tactically, we can now play queen c2. But at the end of all this, black seems to be doing very well here in this sort of position and still can get an f4. So, yeah, it doesn't look as though this position here is that brilliant for white if black played e takes d4. But it looks very tempting to play this f4 move. So f4 was played. So Solak, very dangerous opponent, f4 being played. Now we don't want to take there because e takes. Queen c2 was played, which does mean castling queen sides is on the cards. But it does seem a little bit odd that a4 has been played with the idea of castling queen side later. But on the other hand, this e4 pawn might be a problem. F takes e3, f takes e3. Now e takes d4, which opens up this bishop, of course. In fact, after bishop takes d4, bishop g3 wasn't played. So let's have a look why. Knight e5 was actually played. If bishop g3, the king can actually go here. Well, it's the only move. King d1. Let's have a look. Knight e5. And we've still got this a-file pressure, so we can actually just take that pawn on b5. But there might be some other moves which might appear safer. I don't know, king c1. There's rook f2 though. So maybe the king's best on d1 here. The engine suggests knight f1 actually. So hitting that bishop, and then maybe even taking here. This looks very, very dangerous though, this sort of thing. I don't know. This position looks as though black's got compensation. These pawns look weak, but apparently white's okay. It's about equal. So interestingly, anyway, bishop g3 wasn't played. Knight e5 was played, and with this, it seems bishop f5 would be nice for knight d3 check, for example. We see a takes b, refusing to get that pawn. I mean, that looks extremely dangerous to take here. This pawn, bishop f5. This looks very nasty for white. This position, I think, asking for big trouble. We don't want to go into that. No. So that looks very, very scary. So, okay, we see off this a takes b5. Now knight d3 check. So black is trying to open up the lines. Bishop takes, e takes, queen takes, and now bishop f5. So black does seem very active. And here, I mean, what do you think about this position? Would you prefer white or black here? And I'll give you the engine evaluation. This is at move 23 now. So do you prefer white or black in this position? If I gave you 20 seconds just for an evaluation. I know who I prefer. So do you prefer white or black? Have we got a stream delay, by the way? Well, I personally prefer black. Black looks to have a lot of piece activity here. The engine actually prefers black slightly. On a move like queen c3, this check is starting to look dangerous. For example, this looks like, the rooks are connected here quite well. But actually Magnus, maybe he plays a better move here. He plays e4. Sorry, not e4 there. Pardon me. I mentioned queen c3 there. No. E4 is mentioned by the engine, pardon me. So he plays actually queen e2. Queen e2. And we have a dangerous looking position where it seems bishop g3 check might have been promising. This position, leaving these pawns behind. For example, what can go wrong here? Well, like this, rook takes d4, bishop c2 check, and we're winning the queen. Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff. So it does look as though white's playing with danger here. But okay, black actually, instead of playing rook a8, played c takes b5. Perhaps rook a8 is slightly more dangerous. Queen c4 check is mentioned as best move. It doesn't look great for white, I think. This position, I mean, again, it doesn't look fantastic. A takes. After king d1, a takes. I don't know. It looks a bit strange for Magnus to have this position for me. But anyway. So c takes b5. We have castling queenside now. Queen e6. So it seems to tie white down considerably. Queen e6. Queen g2 now is played. Rook a8. Rook hf1. Bishop e5. And now we have a move to try and discourage perhaps bishop takes. This move looks a little bit on the passive side. Bishop d3. An exchange of rooks. And actually black's advantage seems to be shriveling a little bit now after rook d1. It looks as though Magnus is starting to equalise the position. a5, h5, as though g6 could be useful. a4, king b2, rook d8, h6. These pawns could be dangerous in the future. This one in particular could be quite dangerous. Now, it seems in this position Black had a good shot here at Magnus. If he even sacrificed the exchange, this looks quite dangerous. This wasn't played. So like this, it looks really quite dangerous. If king here, that's a mate in 4 off the check. Queen a6 check. That's mating, yeah. But on rook takes d4, he takes bishop takes d4. There's a move here, king a3. Apparently that almost holds the balance. After bishop takes c5, this position, if the bishop goes back, it's still actually very good. Apparently for Black, you can see it's very dangerous. Yeah, I just think the whole game is a bit strange. This particular game is a bit strange, but apparently White might be okay here. Queen g3. I don't know. Looks a bit scary. But this exchange sack wasn't played. So again, just to remind those who are joining now, the opponent here playing Black is Dragan Solak. He's a 2632. I assume Grandmaster from that rating. So it's a dangerous position. He actually played a3 check here on move 32. And the advantage, funny enough, actually after a3 check, changes hands significantly into White's favour from an engine perspective. It does seem intuitively that this move keeps things closed for White's king. I don't know what you guys think about that. But whatever fantastic continuation, it seems in principle here, after king a2, that this pawn's helping White's king safety intuitively. So perhaps, either rook takes or even bishop takes here apparently. This is quite interesting. After taking here, I guess Black felt that he can't use the rook here because of this queen check. Let's have a quick look at this position. Rook takes d4, queen a8 check, and these pawns are quite dangerous. King f7, maybe the c pawn here, c6. This is actually an advantage for White. Threatening actually now check as well as c7 potentially, and other stuff. This is a tricky position for Black. Say here, then there's knight f3. So that's actually a tricky position for Black. Rook h4, then check here, and then we've got this queen g7 check as well after. So the thing is, though, actually in this position, if we don't do the exchange sack, fine. If we do this, we don't actually have to follow up with the rook, though, to take in the light of queen a8. The engine suggests here queen e3 would have been good for Black. What does White do here? Queen g1, then queen f4. This looks passive for White a bit. This looks quite passive. Now there's a threat of bishop e2. So it's a difficult position. Knight f1, bishop e2. It seems like a very, very tricky position to play. Here the suggestion is actually g6. It gets a bit crazy. So what's going on here? If takes queen g6, there's a bit of counterplay. The best move apparently might be taking here actually, and it's all pretty tricky. But I think basically Black should have gone for something like this in retrospect, with the help of engine analysis. So in this position, Black played a3 check, and okay, so it gets interesting now. Finally, this game for Magnus Carlsen here. The king is much safer now after king a2. And we've still got this very important resource for White available in the position if the rook ever leaves that back row. Black did take with the bishop here, But it's very different now, this position. Black did play queen e3. It's very different to before. White's king is much safer in a way. And Magnus plays queen g1. And he's got this c pawn to look forward to. If there's ever an exchange of queens, then that c pawn's really quite dangerous now, isn't it? If we take here, let's just verify that. If we take here, we can attack the rook first, and then I think, okay, knight e5, we're hitting the bishop, and we can start to move the pawn soon, or do some other things. Rook d1 threatens this. Yeah, black's on the back foot anyway. This pawn's quite dangerous in principle. So, okay, after queen g1, queen e2 was played. This might be a slight mistake as well. Apparently, queen e1 now, wanting that exchange of queens. So white's being left. White's getting that dangerous pawn. If the queen flees here, this looks as though something horrible is about to happen. And in fact, queen e5 is nasty. So there's going to be an exchange of queens here. This is very nice for white. This position, that would leave a very nasty pin of that bishop on d3. So anyway, so queen e1, rook takes d4 was played. And now, not even in a rush to exchange off queens now, Magnus just plays his c pawn up. Rook d6, c7 again. This c pawn's a runaway pawn here. Rook c6. Now white took. Rook e1. Bishop goes back. Trying to defend against this, this check and this c8. Rook e7, and now this rook on the 7th is very dangerous. So we got an idea of taking there. Knight e4 to f6 after. Black took this pawn off. G takes. And now, again, white is threatening check and actually winning the bishop immediately. So that's taken. But here now, in this position, so simplification, white's got that very dangerous passed pawn on c7. White plays now rook e4. Okay, and then there's bishop f5. And now knight f3 is played. The bishop can't take because we're winning the queen. So knight f3 means actually knight d4 is coming in to attack maybe this one as well. So bishop h3. Knight g5 with a threat of hitting, well, it's hitting the bishop to start off with, so that bishop moves again. Rook e5, bishop's being harassed. Now knight e6, threatening to queen. And that's pretty horrible, actually. It's blocked that bishop from stopping, and it's also stopped the rook from coming back. So this pawn has reached a critical danger level, this c pawn out of nowhere. So although it might have been a dodgy opening, this c pawn now seems to be a big advantage for white. We have check, rook c2, so giving up the whole bishop here off the check. Now, okay, the king's on the knight, and I think actually knight d8 might be playable as well, check, but knight d4 was played, so two pieces attacked. Black's now just going a piece down, basically. So black's a piece down here. He had a promising position earlier. It just seems to be a bit unfortunate in a way. Yeah, so he was ground down here. Just b4 now, gaining time for queening. So here at move 60, black resigned. I thought it was really quite scary for white early on in this game. It was quite an innovative opening, though. I guess we're outside of opening theory, and this is what happens. But it looked a little bit on the scary side. This knight e4 seemed very good idea, and then it seems the black had to play very energetically at certain points. Ed here in retrospect looks dangerous. Very dangerous. If there was ever e takes, then I think even e3 is nasty. So it looks scary. We had f4 instead. And yeah, I think black might have missed some chances here. He did open up the position, but it seems, I think the critical point from an engine perspective was when a3 was played here. Because I think it left something pertinent about the position, that even if white's going to lose this d pawn, this c pawn is going to be dangerous here if white's king is not in trouble. So it's strange, a bit of a strange turnaround here. But at this point, black, from my stockfish perspective, was like more than half a pawn advantage here, with taking or rook takes. But it seems to be now nearly +2 for white after a3 check. So I think there's the biggest evaluation swing of this particular game. But we see this pawn's critical here. If white can get the queens off, then now this position, and these pawns are actually quite justified tactically for all sorts of things as well. This pawn on h6. Okay, so an interesting game. I hope you found some interest in that particular game. Let's go on to another game, which is the man of the moment at the moment, who's shocking the entire chess world, Fabiano Caruana. So this is a game not too long ago in the Olympiad, in round 9. Fabiano Caruana was playing Hristos Bicas, a 2-6-4-4 grandmaster, I assume, at that rating. So let's see, Caruana, I assume playing for Italy. So c4, the English opening. c5, knight f3, knight f6. For those of you who haven't heard, Caruana's 5 out of 5 is a performance rating of apparently 3,600. I don't know if someone worked, and it's higher than engines. A lot of engines. That's because it's incalculable. There's no flaw in it. He's won 5 out of 5 in this Singfield tournament. So anyway, so this game is interesting. Just going back a bit. So knight c3, knight c6. g3, b6, and Caruana plays now d4 after c takes, knight takes. White is okay, but black seems to be okay. It seems to be about equal, this position. There's a Maroczy bind. g6, double fianchetto from black. Bishop g2, bishop g7, white castles. d6, bishop g5, black castles. And now, with the bishop being protected, knight takes e4 is threatened. The queen drops back, which gives the idea now bishop h6 is going to be useful, maybe at some point. Or just putting pressure on that d file to keep the d file pressure up. Knight g4, h3. And here, actually, black plays h6. And we're actually going to have something strategically shocking here, which is actually shown in engine view as what the engines would play here. The bishop went back to f4. I mean, clearly black can just snap off this bishop on e3, and black would be doing quite well, actually. This is quite a nice bishop to have. So this would be quite nice, actually, for black. So the bishop stops off at f4 to try and provoke a very committal e5. So the e5 move is tempting, but surely leaves this gaping hole on d5 for the rest of eternity. But if we instead have knight f6 or knight e5, let's see. Knight e5 is less committal in terms of pawn structure. This should be okay for white, this sort of position as well. A small advantage for white, maybe. h4, we have a different game here, obviously. but it seems okay for white. But yeah, black played this move e5, and the idea is to win that dark square bishop. So bishop e3, and now black took the dark square bishop. Queen takes e3. So this structure clearly is very, very fixed. And the bishop pair, is that bishop going to be lethal here? I don't know, because of that pawn on e5. This pawn looks vulnerable. Bishop c8 was played. So the bishop wants to go here to cozy up to the d5 square. Bishop e6 and put pressure on c4. That's protected. Queen e7. Rook d3 now. So trying to potentially gang up on d6. Rook f d8. Black is not distracted by... We can't be distracted by f5 here. I think we've got this... if we play f5, it's a disaster, isn't it? You just take here. And then we can just take here. And we can actually throw an intermediate check here. So that'll be a disaster. So no f5. Black is passively defending here. He's not going to use this f5 facility. Rook ad1. Now h5 is played. As though there might be some dark square grip intention. And maybe this bishop can come like this later. h4, king h7. So introducing bishop h6 as a possibility, and now it's actually played. Bishop h6, rook ac8, but still this is a very good bind on these two squares against b5 and d5 here. So we have now white trying to get rid of this bishop on e6. It's a defensive bishop with bishop h3, rook c6 and king g2. White doesn't really want to do this because, of course, that pawn will be very helpful for the d5 square. a6, as though b5 is on the cards. Now, here is a very interesting little move, f3. Not threatening anything particularly, I think. Great. Oh dear. Oh dear. Sorry, one moment. I'm just going to reconstruct everything. Okay. Hello, have we got a board back? Let's go back to the position. So you're all excited by this position, I expect. Sorry about that. It doesn't usually crash in the middle of a broadcast. Okay, so we had this position and white binding up b5 as well as d5. The rook came back. And now we had this rook h1. Again, that was threatened bishop h3. And now knight d5. So how is the board position here after knight d5? Are we getting back to where we were? Okay, just give you a few seconds after knight d5. On my preview as well, actually, it seems my preview isn't working as well. There's a few technical issues tonight. Anyway, hi there. I hope we're back on the board with knight d5. Okay, so queen b7 was played. And here we see an aggressive move now from Caruana. Can you spot what white played if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? So white to play here. What would you play in this position if you were playing white? So let's test your attacking play. By the way, I hope the board's okay and everything. What would you play with white? Any ideas? Any ideas here? We have got the right position, I think, I hope. Okay, the move, I'll show you what was played then. G4. G4 now was played. Knight F6 is interesting. I'm not sure Knight F6 actually does anything. Let's have a quick look at Knight F6. Actually, this adds a, maybe it was that Kibitzer which crashed it. I don't know. But let's try again. King G7 here apparently. It's not really, this is changing pawn structure, this G4. Okay, and the engine likes it actually. HG, bishop takes. We've actually made this H pawn mobile, and it's got the rook behind it. So bishop takes D5, another committal decision from black. White should be very strong on the light squares now, in theory. If black had played, what does black play though? Say he plays here, H5. This is unpleasant. Knight E3. We've got that F5 square coming up. In fact, it might not even be about F5. We can maybe take here, and if takes here, we've got things like Knight G4 apparently. And we're looking at this D6 again. You know, we've got Knight E5s on the cards if the rook was on there, as well as other horrible things. So basically, black committed to bishop takes D5 after E takes rook C5, and white's light square grip was pretty good after H5, G5, check, and now the rook comes in again with rook F3. So what is the rook doing? Looking at F7 again. Well, after King G7, a really crushing move was played here. So white's plan win. This is at move 37. So white's plan win here. What would you play with the white pieces? Actually, I think I might just go back, try and get my preview working. And if this is actually defended, then we have rook takes F7 or bishop takes, either, because we gain access to this G6 square. So even rook takes F7 is strong because of the check. And then we can take this bishop. And although the exchange down here, this is nasty after Queen G6, because we can win back the exchange as well as Queen a pawn. Things are not moving here for black after H6. It's a disaster. This H7's coming. If something like this, we got check. We can win everything. So pretty crushing, this bishop E6. There's no real, I don't think there's any real defense. The engine indicates +8 or more in this position. That was rook F8. If we try rook C7 instead, then again, taking here doesn't make much of a difference. We win this bishop. We go here. We get that keep in. We play H6. And this, we can even take here and play this and win the other rook with the queening. Okay, so great game from Caruana, it seems. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to another game. Or should we quickly have a review of this? Quick review from the English opening. So black played a very committal idea of playing for e5. Okay. And white seemed to want the light square bishop exchange. But in fact, it seems this g4 now was an attacking move. It's something to bear in mind because this rook's quite attacking, and this rook's also potentially attacking. It's interesting, this position, and it's the attention has gone away from d6 in this structure. The attention seems to be on black's king after in this sequence. Well, after this, it's tricky. If black had played something like this, I think it's still tricky. Queen f3. It's getting unpleasant for black. If takes. So say something like this, h5. This position looks as though it might be safer than the game though. But again, you know, white's got this iron grip on the light squares, so I think white's got the advantage here. But it's a different game. So anyway, so the game didn't last long after this bishop takes though. Yeah, black's king was actually in big trouble after bishop e6. Interesting. So let's have a look now at, this is a nice attacking game, I think from Poland Grandmaster, top Polish GM, Radoslaw Wojtaszek was playing white against Yannick Pelletier. So what Wojtaszek is a 2-7-3-5. So one of the top seeds of the Olympiad. d4, e6, c4, knight f6, knight f3, knight c3. After d takes e4, bishop b4, as though white's pawn is attacked. White gambits it with bishop takes c4 though. After knight takes e4, white simply just castles. So interesting pawn sacrifice line. Now if black gets really greedy, this is unpleasant I think. Here, rook b1, 2 pawns down, but trouble here. For example, like this, rook b3. I think we can start to swing this rook somewhere. Knight e5. So we've got knight takes f7 here as a threat. This position could be really unpleasant anyway. This is far off from the game. I just wanted to quickly show something about it. It's just black's under attack from the opening, but black didn't go for this second pawn. Black just retreated this knight. We have check. Knight c6. I mean, maybe black should have considered this materialistic. I don't know. It seems risky. So anyway, knight f6 check, and then bishop g5 pinning the knight. We have bishop takes c3. This seems to strengthen white's centre. Black castles. Rook a-e1. So white's got a nice grip on the position, and you'll notice this bishop's blocked in. So for the pawn, it's like a positional gambit. With a good clamp on the e5 square. The bishop's not brilliant. This pin looks actually quite effective. Without the dark square bishop for black, the pin looks quite dangerous. So what do you guys think about this position here? Would you have done this gambit to get this position as white? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So here, would you think white's doing okay? Is there enough compensation for the pawn? What do you guys think? Yeah, yeah. I think black's under pressure. The engine actually likes white a little bit. So knight e7 was played, inviting to double the pawns. This wasn't actually played. If bishop takes, this might be okay for black. Hitting the queen, this might start to be okay. Actually, you know, bishop f6 wasn't played. Queen c2 was played instead. And it looks as though white's going to play bishop d3 soon. b5, strange move b5. But what does black play? Knight g6? This should be pleasant enough for white after knight e5. And actually white could build up an attack with rook e3 here to get this rook round. Well, there might be stronger. Maybe. Okay. So anyway, we see the strange move b5 being played to accelerate the development here. So that's taken bishop b7, queen d3, knight f5, knight e5, h6, and the bishop actually drops back here. Knight d6. This bishop drops back. It was okay. Queen c8. Rook d1. A quiet pause in the game. Rook d8 as these rooks centralize. Now, move 19. We see knight c6, and the rook goes to e8. Queen c2. With queen c2, it looks as though white might be interested now in c4. I think in this position, if we play c4 here, I was just wondering about bishop a6, but maybe not. I think this is okay as well for white, bishop a6. But anyway, it looks as though queen c2 is a slight precaution. Bishop a6. Rook moves, bishop b5. That's taken. And now white plays this d5. Okay, so in this position, if let's have a look. In the game, queen b7 was played. But if knight takes d5 here, then c4, simply we're forking the knights. So that's not possible. And if e takes, then we're winning the exchange with knight e7 check. So okay, so d5 looks interesting. Queen b7, c4, knight d6, and now bishop b2. This looks like a menace. This bishop now on this diagonal. Bishop b2, knight d7, queen c3, threatening mate in one. Knight f6. Queen c2. Okay, so what's going on here after queen c2? It looks as though if knight takes c4, we can take here and then take here. So that's not on or anything. So black plays now queen a6. Now bishop takes f6 is played. G takes c5. These rooks can swing in, it seems, soon to get to the king. Knight f5. D takes e6. So that knight is hanging here. So if takes here, we can either take this, or actually even taking here first is better than taking this. So black has to deal with that knight on f5 after d takes e6. Rook takes e6 was played though. And white now takes on e6. F takes e. And a very strong move, queen e4, keeping hold of the knight and threatening queen e6. And here, actually, black crumbles after rook e8. White now plays a very strong move, which I'm not sure there's too much good after for black. Can you see what white played here at move 33, the final move of the game? So white to play, what would you play here? Any ideas? So white to play, it's the final move of the game. Okay. Actually, it wasn't a rook move. If we look at rook d7, it wasn't this. This might be okay for white as well. This is actually good for white as well. It's a very good position, actually, isn't it? This position is very good, but even stronger, g4. So g4. Okay, so if it's a disaster on certain moves. If knight h4, then rook d7, and actually we're immediately now threatening queen h7. So this rook on the 7th looks terminal. And if f5, we just play all sorts of things. I think not queen e5 because there's knight f3 check. G takes will do. And that's horrible. If takes here, check. Queen g6. And that's pretty terminal. So g4. If knight g7, then rook d7 again is good here. Threatening queen g6. So if queen c8 here, rook e7 now. Unfortunate position of king and queen for taking here. That would be a fork. So queen b8. We just take the queen there. Queen mate's not a legal move. Sorry, pardon me. But it's actually mentioned as one of the strongest moves for black. It's queen b8, and that's pretty desperate. So what on earth is going on there? Well, white is now threatening queen g6. What does black do here? Black's in big trouble. If f5, we just queen e5. Yeah, we just do queen e5. If queen e8, queen a8, queen g6, queen g6 here. If takes here, takes, knight g6. This is really strong. Wrestling mates here. Yeah. So I don't know. That was an enterprising game from white. If we just rewind that. So white's casually just sacrificed a centre pawn here by playing bishop takes c4. So this is an idea of a 2-7-3-5, just giving up this centre pawn. And it seems very dangerous. And also offering, of course, another pawn here. So that would be crazy variations taking here. But yeah, there seems to be a strong pressure here for white. Black giving back a pawn. But this c4 d5 stuff got the bishop on the diagonal, and yeah, very dangerous. Black started crumbling around here. Okay, I think yeah, that's it for this week. Okay, sorry about the technical issues we had earlier. Maybe see you next week. Okay, thanks very much. See you next week. Have a good week.